We're glad to have the opportunity to share our thoughts with you on what we viewed as some of the important elements of this year's Pacemaker judging. We went through nearly 500 books, and one of the first things that we looked at was the concept of all the books. So let's kind of talk about the concept of some of the books that we looked at so we can give some thoughts on that.
I think the first thing that grabbed most of us is just instantly right off the bat what you see on the cover, and then instantly you go to that opening page, and how does that cover relate to the opening page, and what's said in the opening that really carries that theme through.
Absolutely, and I'm looking for something, when I see the cover and I go to the opening and all the way through, I'm looking for the visual and the verbal to be carried all the way through from beginning to end, and see it in everything, in the stories, in the alternative coverage, the sidebars, everything.
Well, and also, I think it's important that that opening copy set the tone, but have enough specifics in it that it's only applied to that school that year with that concept, that it won't work anywhere else. And so, rather than generalities, it should have specifics that apply to that school.
One of the fun things that I noticed was looking through, and like you mentioned, some of the books took that theme all the way through, all the way to the index, even to the colophon, you know, and then digging into that colophon and seeing, wow, this is kind of where they came up with the idea and where they were inspired from. You know, that was kind of the jump start for them, and then to be able to look there and go back and go through it again. So that was one of the really neat things we saw.
And part of that whole concept idea too is, I mean, I'm the detail person, so I'm looking for a complete index as part of an essential for that concept package, where we don't only list the names of the people who are in the books, but all the subjects and the sports and the classes, and that those indexes are divided up by letters so that it makes it easy for the reader to access. Also, clear table of contents. We saw a lot of books that strayed from traditional coverage, and we want to make sure that when we do that, we make it clear to the reader where he can find his sports and his academics and whatever people are looking for.
Well, we were even talking about a more clear table of contents on divider pages if you want to be more specific
Right.
that way. Any additional information is helpful.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that coverage, since you also mentioned that. The coverage of the books we saw was multi-layered, I felt like. You know, it wasn't just a one-dimensional. They really took the reader and, you know, had them look at this page, but then there was more coverage of that same topic later on and elsewhere in the book in lots of different ways. And so that was really exciting to see that multi-layered coverage throughout and drawing the reader from one section to another even.
And when you look in the index and you look under the whatever topic it is, volleyball or a club, and you see it on 4 different places, not just in the club section, not just on the one football spread. That was a lot of fun. I think it's more fun for students too, that they're forced to look all through the book. And I'm not just going to look at my one spread, the one place where I'm going to be, but then I get excited because I'm going to be in a whole bunch of different places, and so are my friends.
Well, and increasing the coverage even on the actual spread with alternative story forms, and whether we call them mods or, you know, sidebars or whatever they are, just that different kind of coverage that strays away from that traditional copy package.
Well, and I think we saw in the stronger books, as far as sports coverage, if they could have a lot of fun with the spread and then move the team photo and the scoreboard information to a later part in the book. There were some really strong books that even said scoreboard and team information on page 175 or what have you, and all of us really, I think, enjoyed, you know, that was easy to find.
And Lynn mentioned, you know, those books that had that coverage not only had your traditional copy type coverage in the story itself, but had lots of really neat alternative copy. Really good examples of sidebar packages, or mods as we sometimes call them. And so let's kind of go through some of what you guys looked for as far as the copy goes.
Well, one thing is the quotes are really important. We want to have quotes that are specific, that have personality. I don't want to see, I would like to see quotes that show some excitement, some opinion, something that, so that even though I wasn't there, when I read the quote, I can feel like I'm part of what was going on.
And not really even just the opinion, just the reaction and emotion to it. You know, I look for, not just in photos, but also in copy. I want to see that emotion and that reaction to what was going on in that photo, in the story, or in this caption and in the copy itself.
Well, and I think the captions are so important because, you know, they're the most read copy in the book. And so I think that we were looking for captions that were packed with information, not just one sentence, but, you know, how much can we get in there? And a lot of the captions that we saw had quotes in them too.
That's true.
And specific dates and specific scores. You have a whole story just within the caption itself.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about the designs that we looked at. Whenever we all agreed, when we first looked through the book, of course, we all have our own design aesthetic that we kind of lean toward and tend to. But, you know, we all look through, and when that design catches you and draws you in, whether it be a good, solid, basic design or something that's a little bit pushing the envelope and a little bit outside of the box. We all talked about a little while ago those designs, and so let's talk about what you looked for.
For me, it was anything that kind of went above and beyond just simple box design really caught my eye. And of course, part of that is great photos, use of color, that kind of thing. But it was really nice to see people do something just a little bit different, whether it's bleeding off the page or anything like that, any kind of touches.
Well, I think use of space too is important for me, because if you're gonna do that layered coverage and you're gonna have the alternative story forms or the mods or whatever you wanna call them, those pages have to be packaged very carefully so that it makes it easy for the reader to access the information.
I think it's important to think about the amount of space that you put between objects. I think some pages were less strong when they weren't thinking about the space between things and they weren't designed on a grid. The same thing with the text. A lot of times the books that stood out the strongest were thinking about the text the same way they think about the photos and how big the photos are. And I'm not bothered by small type. I actually enjoy small type. The thing is, though, you have to be controlled about the tracking and the leading in addition to the size. And so type can be huge and it can be minuscule, but the space around it and between it is really important.
Well,
It has to have that balance.
And the actual font is important too, because there were some books that had a font that they used for their copy that had a lot of personality to it, and then drew it into those captions when it got really small and it gets hard to read.
Well, and part of that is the use of color. If it's hard to read at all against the background color, your eye instantly kind of shies away from it.
You had mentioned something about the photos when you looked at the photos. You know, obviously, you know, yearbooks are picture books and history books, first and foremost. And so a lot of our students, whenever they go to look at books, they're looking for themselves and they're looking for their friends. So let's talk about the good photography that we saw, because we saw a lot of it.
Yeah, well, I think all of us kind of agreed that when you open a book and there's a strong opening image, it really can grab your eye, as long as it's a good photo. You know, what that may or may not entail can change, but you know, those strong opening photos, and then if you can somehow carry the theme through the photos, it just does more to catch the eye and really bring the point home.
And those photos that show the emotion and the reactions rather than those static photos, I think are important. One thing that I really wish that some people paid more attention to is pinhead photos. We saw some photos where the heads are so small
I
that,
have no idea who they
Yeah.
are.
or if they even went to that school.
Yeah.
You know, and coming from a little bit of a photography background, you know, the photo credit for me is important. Not just for our student photographers, because I like to see them get that ownership, not just who designed the spread and who wrote the story, but the photographers need that ownership and that credit as well. But then on the flip side of that, whenever we have big current events that we always want to cover and kind of mark the history of the year, whether it be an election or celebrity news or what was going on, we need to make sure we properly credit that. We saw some books that did that really, really well, purchased packages, got those exact permissions they needed to from the services, and credited the services, you know, right there in the photo, near the photo, and in the call-a-thon.
I think it's important to be clear about that, exactly, on the call-a-thon as well, and be clear, did you actually purchase this photo, or there are a lot of really great photos available on the internet, but we don't own those, and so it'd be better to let go of that and use a photo that you can pay for, or think of some alternative coverage. Maybe you can photo, we had some students actually went to the inauguration, and the coverage was still about the inauguration, and it was photos that they actually shot at the event, which was great to see.
There were also some
themselves.
great books who did artwork themselves, either a watercolor or crayon use or something like that, to do a picture of an event, and that's original work, and that almost kind of drove the point home stronger than the photo that everyone else had.
Right. Well, I think that, you know, we can all agree we saw some great books and everything, and that there's some outstanding work out there, so thank you.